Okay, I have Roger Stone with me today to talk about what's going on with Donald Trump. What the heck is going on with Biden? Is he sick? Is he dead? Is Kamala Harris a real threat to a second Trump presidency? Will there be another assassination attempt? Roger, thank you so much for joining me today.
Stephen, it's great to be here. I guess many Americans were shocked, uh, not last Saturday, but the previous Saturday, regarding the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I wrote a book in 2013, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, which I fully document the Secret Service's involvement in the efforts to kill Kennedy. Many of the same Secret Service protocols that were violated in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, were violated in Butler, Pennsylvania, 2 Saturdays ago. So the building, for example, from which the shooter discharged his shots, that building should have been searched and completely sealed under the Secret Service manual. That's just one of many examples. But it's now clear that the Secret Service knew that there was a man with a gun who was unidentified on the premises for 62 minutes. And they didn't evacuate President Trump, and they didn't even inform President Trump, based on the great interview he gave on Fox with Jesse Waters. So I'd like to say that I'm surprised, but if you go and check, I suggested in an interview in 2018 with the New American magazine that they would ultimately try to assassinate him because it's the only way they can stop this political reform movement. Look, they tried to remove him under the Russian collusion hoax. That failed. They tried to impeach him twice. That failed. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to incarcerate him. They tried to keep him off the ballot. Now they have tried to kill him. Yes, if I can anticipate your next question, yeah, I do fear that they will do it again. Based on the hearing with the Secret Service director earlier today, the Secret Service simply cannot be trusted to protect the president. By the way, I think there are many very good men and women in the rank and file of the Secret Service. I've known many of them over the years, having worked for 3 presidents. But at the top, we have a DEI hire running the agency. And what happened is just completely unacceptable.
Yeah. I see a lot of people in my comments section saying that Donald Trump needs to hire private security. Is he allowed to do that, or Secret Service has full control of him and his movement?
No, he is technically could hire a private security company or individuals to augment and work with the Secret Service. There are, for example, security personnel who work at Mar-a-Lago who work with the service all the time, but do not work for the Secret Service. I think for his own protection that he should do that. I know that people who are far more knowledgeable than I am about these matters, like Eric Prince, who they also tried to smear in the Russian collusion hoax, but who is a very good man and has done incredible things for this country, and who knows more about these issues than perhaps anyone I know, is consulting the president on this matter. So, look, in the meantime, we need to pray for his safety. I think praying for his safety saved his life. The left wing likes to make fun of us when we talk about our belief in God, or when we, just yesterday, Bill Maher, one of the most unfunny guys on TV, who has to use a laugh track to pretend he's funny, and who without a platoon of comedy writers, Stephen, I've done that show 4 times. Bill is, there's nothing here. Bill is being fed all these lines by his comedy writers. He said that it was dangerous that Donald Trump ascribed his survival to the Almighty, to God. I find comments like that dangerous.
Yeah. Speaking of Biden and dangerous situations, I think right now a lot of Americans are not feeling safe. We don't know what's going on with the president's health. I'm seeing people saying that he may have suffered a stroke in Las Vegas. He had to be emergency removed. They're blaming it and using the cover of COVID. Nobody's seen him in 5 or 6 days now. Kamala Harris has him call into a meeting, but they've run the voice analysis through software, and it's saying it's 95% likely that it's artificial intelligence faking that voice. What do you think is going on with President Biden?
Well, that is a new tactic of the left. You may remember several months ago, some media outlet came up with what they claimed was an audio recording. It was very, very hard to hear because of various background noise that had been added, but they alleged that I had threatened two Democrat congressmen. It was very easy to go get. There are three very good, not too expensive AI software detection programs. I was able to immediately determine, which I already knew, I'd never said any of these things at all, and that the whole thing was a fraud to discredit me, try to keep me away from the Trump campaign. So they're capable of anything. Now, when he was vice president of the United States, Richard Nixon told Senator Joe McCarthy, look, when you go to shoot rats, you need to shoot straight because you need to kill the rats. By that, he means you have to have the facts, you have to know the truth before you go out and make public charges. There's so much incoming information now that I really urge people to take the time to sort through it. So was there a second shooter on a water tower? I don't know. I've seen a half dozen reports that there was, but I don't know that to be true. Anything at this point is possible. I do think it's curious that Biden hasn't been seen, but my sources told me several things. First of all, presidential brother Jim Biden began telling people on Friday that Joe would issue a resignation letter on Sunday. Secondarily, I'm told that Biden sleeps 16 to 18 hours a day, and that Hunter Biden has emerged as his chief gatekeeper, a scheduler, and a political advisor. That people in his own party, with other than a handful such as Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Congressman James Clyburn, could get through with him and communicate with him. But right now, Stephen, Joe Biden is very, very, very angry. He's very angry because he correctly knows that Barack Obama, who he perceives that he was completely loyal to over 8 years, orchestrated his ouster. And he's absolutely right. It was Obama who cut off the big donor money. It was Obama who ultimately convinced Pelosi and House Leader Hakeem Jeffries that if Biden was at the head of the ticket, he would take down a number of incumbent House members. He also convinced Chuck Schumer that states that were previously thought to be safe would no longer be safe if Joe Biden was the candidate. The George Clooney op-ed in the New York Times that was got a huge amount of coverage, we're told that Clooney checked with Obama before he did that. Please give me a break. It was Obama who suggested to Clooney that he write it. So Biden is furious. Somebody who was in the know told me he actually said, now I won't go down in history with FDR, LBJ, or even Bill Clinton as one of our greatest presidents. You see, Joe Biden actually believes he's doing a good job. Joe Biden believes that he's something special. He's always had a monstrous ego, and he's always had a very high regard for himself. But now he's extremely angry at Obama. It is notable that in his letter, he said he would be endorsing no one. And then only minutes later, he said, no, I'm endorsing Kamala Harris. The Clintons immediately endorsed Kamala Harris, even though they were involved in the effort to remove Biden. That's because Hillary Clinton is angling for the vice presidency. She's angling for that vice presidential nomination. There's no limit to the bitterness and the greed and the grasping nature of Hillary Clinton. And of course, and I think this is unlikely, if Kamala Harris was elected president and Hillary Clinton was elected vice president, well, Kamala Harris would then need a food taster, in my opinion.
Yeah, sleeping 15 to 16 hours a day, that's a toddler. That just shows the decline of his mental situation. But I think you're right. Remember, President Trump joked that having Kamala Harris was Joe Biden's greatest insurance policy, maybe the best insurance policy ever purchased, right? But I think you're right. If they install Hillary, I think Kamala is going to have to be looking over her back because close to 50 of Hillary's closest friends have unalived themselves.
Yeah, it's. I've seen that meme. I think it's great. I don't care who you are. Nobody has 57 friends who committed suicide, friends and associates. Look, Kamala Harris, we're told that she has the votes to snag this nomination now. I'm not certain that that is accurate. I think that she is working very hard to put it together, but it depends on a number of things. First of all, it depends on her performance in the days and weeks ahead. Remember, this election is not until I believe it's August 19th. And more than 50% of the delegates, Stephen, are non-white. So, and there's 7,000 delegates. So that's not a representative sample of America, but it would seem to benefit Kamala Harris. But then 1/3 of the delegates are controlled by 3 union leaders, 3 of the most left-wing unions in the country, the CWA, AFSCME, I don't recall the third. So there's plenty of potential here for a challenge to Kamala Harris if she continues to trail Donald Trump in the polls, or if she trips. Now, the fact that they appear to have used AI, and most definitely a recording, for Joe Biden to call into the headquarters to endorse Kamala Harris and make it seem like everything is fine, that's one strike right there. We have to see how she does on the stump. But Obama has pointedly not endorsed her. This is a very key fact. Obama has not endorsed her, says that he won't endorse a candidate before the convention, which leaves him free to maneuver again behind the scenes as he has done previously. There's great nervousness in the Democrat Party about her as the front runner based on several things. First of all, it's her conduct as vice president. There's a great bite from President Biden's press conference last week in which he says, I put Kamala Harris in charge of the border and she's doing a great job. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but it was pretty close to that. If that doesn't pop up in a Trump campaign commercial, I'd be very surprised. There's nothing in her conduct of the office of vice president. More importantly, particularly in this phase, there's nothing in the conduct of her own presidential campaign in 2020 that would indicate to you that she's going to be a strong or sure-footed candidate. She got in the Democrat primary, she got less than 1% of the black vote. And of course, she is not African American. She is Indian and Bahamian in descent. That's very different than African American. We make a mistake of just grouping all people of color as if they all think exactly the same politically, which is certainly not true. And Donald Trump has an extraordinary record of economic opportunity for African Americans, but also a record of criminal justice reform. Let's remember, Kamala Harris attacked Joe Biden in the debate for authoring and pushing and getting Bill Clinton to sign the 1994 crime bill, which requires the harsh mandatory penalties for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use, which has been used, I think, illicitly to incarcerate hundreds of thousands of poor people and disproportionately black people. The problem with that is, as a prosecutor, Kamala Harris used that very law to lock up 1,500 people, 1,500 overwhelmingly black people who belong in drug treatment programs, not in jail at taxpayer expense. So there are other instances where she required people to remain in state prison past the end of their sentence so they could provide cheap labor for the state. I read a story about a case yesterday of a man who was wrongly accused of murder. And when it was absolutely proven that he was the wrong guy, that he was innocent, she decided to retry him. She kept him in prison. he ultimately was completely cleared, absolved, and released. So she's got a lot to answer for. They would like to frame this as the prosecutor versus the felon. I don't think that's going to work for two reasons. First of all, there's her record, which I can guarantee you we're going to hear a lot about, including her record on border security, where she was in charge, but she never even visited the border. But also, the American people see through this entire fraudulent tsunami of lawfare against Donald Trump. There's no one who believes that New York trial was legitimate, that the charges were even legitimate. It was a frame job, and most Americans see that. So I think that this is very much, Stephen, like 1968 in so many ways. First of all, in 1968, the pressure on President Lyndon Johnson to step down, which he did, just as there was enormous pressure on Joe Biden to step down, which he has now done. Secondarily, the Democrat Party, deeply divided by the Vietnam War, massive demonstrations at their convention in Chicago. Today's Democratic Party, badly divided by the conflict in the Middle East, guaranteed that if they actually have a real convention, rather than some virtual convention or viral convention, you're going to have the same kind of raucous and perhaps violent demonstrations. You have a sitting vice president who has to carry forward the record. Hubert Humphrey was forced to defend the Vietnam War conduct record of Lyndon Johnson until he finally broke loose of it. Kamala Harris is going to be forced to defend Joe Biden's record on inflation, on border security, on the fact that we're inching closer and closer to world war. We don't even have peace talks going between Russia and Ukraine. We have no interest in killing and stopping the killing. It's really quite extraordinary. And then the other analogy, Donald Trump has staged the greatest political comeback in American history. You notice that the deep state, that the Biden Justice Department, that all of these state governments, they didn't bring any charges against Donald Trump in the first year of Biden's presidency. If he committed all these horrific crimes, why wasn't he charged then? Why did they wait till the third year? I'll tell you why. Because they didn't think he could get renominated. They thought they were finished with him, that he was a spent volcano, as Disraeli wrote about another statesman. And the way he came storming back for the nomination, the way he really kind of wrapped this up quickly, shows you that the Republican Party at the grassroots level has been changed dramatically. We are no longer the party of fat cats and Wall Street and the moneyed interests, the country club. The wealthiest Americans are for Kamala Harris. Most of the Silicon Valley money, most of the Wall Street money, most of the money managers and the hedge fund money, it's not with the Republican Party, and it's not with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's campaign is fueled by average people giving small and medium-sized contributions over and over again. And the most amazing thing is that all of those things that they thought would destroy Trump have actually turbocharged his campaign. So as a veteran of 13 national presidential campaigns, the most vexing problem that I saw only months ago was money. Trump was raising a lot of money, but not enough money. There was a giant gap between what the Democrats had and what Trump was able to raise. Between his mugshot and arraignment in Georgia, a case that is now completely fallen apart, and his conviction in New York, that gap has been filled. We are now going to be able to spend, I think, not only outspend, but spend what is sufficient to win. Now, remember, the $280 million that was raised by the Biden-Harris committee, that money cannot be brought forward and be given to Kamala Harris. There's already an FEC decision on this. So that means she has to start from scratch. What does this mean? Well, it means that today the Trump campaign has the resources to go into the paid media, digital, radio, cable, broadcast television, and so on, in all of the swing states right now, and begin defining Kamala Harris and her record. And that is a huge, significant advantage in a political campaign. The other thing to look for here, two things to look for. First of all, Kamala, who still is looking over her shoulder at Barack Obama, has to choose a running mate. She would be foolish to choose Hillary Clinton, but that doesn't mean Hillary Clinton isn't maneuvering for it. There's a number of potential candidates that could change the electoral map. So, for example, if she went with Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania being a must-carry state for Trump, well, that could have an impact, a positive impact for her. On the other hand, if it can be proven, and I believe it can be, malfeasance on the part of Shapiro regarding security in the outer perimeter at Butler, which was the responsibility of state working with local law enforcement, I think that's a problem for Josh Shapiro. Perhaps she goes to Governor Cooper of North Carolina, another important swing state where the race is expected to be close. That could change the dynamic slightly. There's some discussion of Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. I think an all-female ticket, probably a bit too much at this point. But look for her in the next couple of days to select a running mate. First of all, who brings her delegates, because this claim that she has the convention locked up, I argue this is a fluid situation. And if by August 1st, she isn't leading in the polls, or if she stumbles on the campaign trail, which of course is very likely, watch for Barack Obama to seek to replace her. And yes, I've talked on this show and elsewhere about the ideal, from their point of view, candidate, which would be Michelle Obama. Now, to be clear, I never said Michelle Obama wanted to be president. I never said she would launch a campaign for president. What I've always said was she would be drafted by a runaway open convention. That open convention has now been created. I still think that is a possibility. Really depends on whether Kamala Harris can consolidate her position, pick a running mate that helps her lock down this nomination, but it also depends on her performance on the stump. And she does not have a strong track record in that regard.
Okay. I'm sure you're not a big fan of the New York Times, but they came out this morning and said that Kamala Harris is the least electable Democrat and could, in fact, pull down the down ballot votes Democrats need to keep the Senate and secure the House. Any truth to that?
I think that's absolutely true. But again, who is that making a case for? Remember, I said earlier, more than 50% of the delegates are non-white. So I think the only way you could theoretically replace Kamala Harris now, given the racial construct of their party, is by replacing her with another woman and another woman of color. That, to me, is Michelle Obama. People can laugh about this if they want. I see Vivek Ramaswamy is now saying the same thing I've been saying for 3 years. I saw Monica Crowley the other night on Fox, a former aide to President Nixon, former official in the Treasury Department in the Trump administration, very smart lady, good friend of mine. She's been saying it for some time as well. I still think it is a possibility. I'm not certain it will happen, but right now I'm 2 for 3. In other words, I predicted the assassination attempt on Trump. I predicted that Joe Biden would not be the candidate. You can find that all over the internet. I may yet be 3 for 3. I'm not certain Kamala will be the nominee. At this point, I would call her the probable nominee, but she has a lot of remedial work to do, and it's not clear that she has the capability to do it.
Okay. The Daily Mail posted this morning that even with the big bump in excitement for Kamala Harris, $81 million raised, this record-breaking, that Trump is still dominating, especially in the swing states, and in the polling, or not the polling, the betting tables, they're still showing Donald Trump as winning. Is it still too early to say that he's going to keep this level of advantage over her? Because I have to imagine once they commit to her, they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars polishing her image, her campaign promises. But it all feels a little too early at this point.
Stephen, I think that's a sound judgment. First of all, just the nature of polling. You really can't take a viable and particularly accurate poll in the eye of the storm. Everything that we're seeing in the media every day, this is impacting the views of voters. We still have developments regarding the attempted assassination of Trump. That affects public opinion. We still have the fighting in the Democrat Party. That affects public opinion. We don't know where Joe Biden is. I'm not going to speculate, but that affects public opinion. So I think it is reasonable to assume that Trump will continue to maintain a narrow lead. But I must tell you, I think our greatest single problem as a Trump supporter, as a friend of the president for 45 years, is overconfidence. Yes, we had a great convention. I've been to every convention since 1964. I've worked at most of them for multiple presidential candidates, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, the great Bob Dole, who would have made a great president, by the way. But this is the best convention that I've been to. On the other hand, I was not surprised when CrowdStrike, the tech company, had a glitch which closed down the airline industry, many banks, and totally played havoc in the country the day after the convention. CrowdStrike's the exact same company that claimed falsely that they inspected the servers at the Democrat National Committee and that there had been a Russian hack. At least that's what we were told their report said. The judge would not let my defense attorneys have that report at trial. But later, Sean Henry, the head of CrowdStrike, testified before the House Intelligence Committee saying that no, actually, that was a draft and they had no actual proof that the Russians hacked the DNC. Well, that was one of the underlying premises of the entire Russian collusion hoax. So I ask you, is a company and a man who lied about that for 2 years capable of lying about this glitch that distracted all public attention from the developing questions regarding, at that time, Donald Trump's assassination and the situation around Joe Biden and his rapid deterioration? I suspect that this was not a glitch at all, that this was done purposely to end the news cycle, telling us more and more about the malfeasance and incompetence, at a minimum, of the Secret Service. It is way too early for any Republican to say this is in the bag, or that it's a sure thing, or that we're going to run up enough of a margin to beat the cheat. Every single vote is going to count. Trump knows that. Trump does not think this will be an easy race. Trump is not taking anything for granted. You saw this in the fact that he immediately went out to Michigan. Many people told him it was too dangerous, that he can't go back on the road, he can't do any more rallies. You just don't understand the indomitable spirit of Donald Trump. He is a fighter. He is a brawler. But I'll tell you this, Stephen, because I saw him in Milwaukee. He has a new serenity about him, a new calmness, a new surety that I really think comes from his stated recognition of the fact that God spared his life. But for a millisecond, a millimeter of an inch, he would not be with us today. He knows this. He knows that he is blessed. He knows that he is protected. He knows that his life was spared for some larger mission. This makes him a much better candidate. It makes him, I think, show the country the kind of calm, the kind of resolve that you want in a leader. That's not to say that he won't continue to be funny, because he is on the stump and very entertaining, but there is a new Donald Trump. It embodies all of his best qualities, but he seems to be calmer and more patient, and I think totally understanding his place in history and why God has spared him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I could see it. I've pointed it out to my wife many times. I know we're up against the clock. I have 8 more questions I want to ask, so we're just going to have you back on the show. I just wanted to personally plug the man who killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ. You didn't ask me to do this. I am reading this right now and loving it, absolutely loving it. I see so many correlations between the Donald Trump situation with the Secret Service and this hatred of Kennedy, this deep state desire to remove him. And so anyway, I wanted to thank you for writing that book. But if people want to follow you online, Roger, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, first of all, the best place to get the book is by going to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. That way you get the paperback edition, which has 3 extra chapters, and it will be personally signed. And if you wish, it can be personally inscribed to you. Again, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. If you can't remember that, go to stonezone.com, which is where I post all my videos, all my print articles, all my radio interviews. But also you can go to the store there where the same book is also available, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Now, if you take that book and my other book, The Myth of Russian Collusion, both of them detail the activities of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Secret Service, the FBI in efforts to undermine 2 presidents. In the case of John Kennedy, they murdered him. In one of my other books, The Secrets of Watergate, the Nixon's secrets, they undermined and brought him down in a silent coup. They tried to kill Ronald Reagan, assassinate him. I have a new book coming out on that. That's why I conclude that we need to pray for Donald Trump.
Okay. I will put those direct links down below. Roger, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Stephen, always great to be with you.